Welcome to the MX podcast featuring Dan Roberts.
Welcome to another episode of the MX podcast. Today I'm joined by Lillian Van Der Veen. She's a model, very successful model, signed to Premier, but she's also an expert in nutrition. And that's why I wanted to have her on today and pick her brain. So Lillian, thank you for coming on today. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And also apologies. I did say I would send you some questions and I didn't. So thank you very much for being completely underprepared for what I'm about to ask. I like that.
That's okay. I'm sure we'll have a great conversation nonetheless.
So just to give some context, let's start off and talk about your modeling career first. So when did you get signed? You're from Holland, right? You sound like you're from Holland.
Yeah, that's correct.
So what was your modeling journey like so far?
Sure. So I am from the Netherlands, but I emigrated to Australia when I was 12. So I didn't start modeling when I was in the Netherlands. It was in Australia that I first got signed. So my mother agency is in Perth. That's where I was living in Western Australia at the time. So I got signed when I was 21 with that agency, which is considered kind of old, in modeling terms. But my first experience with modeling was a few years before that. It was when I was 17 and I entered a model search competition that was being held in Australia. It was done by like a teenage girls magazine. It's not around anymore now, but at the time that was like a teenage girl magazine that a lot of people read, and they put on this model search every year. And I actually think that's how Miranda Kerr first got discovered through the same competition.
Well.
Yeah, she's done all right. So I entered that competition. I made it into the finals, which included flying to Sydney and doing some photo shoots for the magazine and some interviews and stuff. But I didn't win the competition. But because I was in the finals, I did get in contact with Chadwick Models, which is the agency that I later signed with. So I had that initial contact with them. I went into the agency for a meeting, but at that time, I was living 2.5 hours away from the city. I had already made plans to start uni the following year, and modeling just wasn't really something that I was super interested in at the time. So I kind of decided to keep it in the back of my mind, but not pursue it at that time. But then when I finished my degree,
What was your degree
in? Nutrition. I've got a bachelor degree in nutrition. Yeah.
Nice.
When I finished that, I just didn't really know what I wanted to do next. I was kind of thinking of like studying a master's and becoming a dietitian, but I wasn't completely sure if like the role of a dietitian is what I wanted to do. So I decided to take a gap year at that time. And that's when I was like, well, if I want to do modeling, now is kind of the last time to give it a go, because I had, a year off. I had the freedom to do it. I was 21 and I knew that was considered old already for models. So I decided to give it a go. I got in contact with the agency that I'd had contact with previously. They were very positive. They were like, yep, let's give it a go. I did development classes for, I think, a couple of months just to get a little bit of an idea of like how to pose and that sort of stuff. And then I started getting bookings quite quickly. So it all started taking off, I suppose, like fairly quickly from there.
Cool. I'm very interested. Before we talk about nutrition, I've not known anyone who's done development classes. What do you learn exactly?
So I think when I did it, I only did it for one term. So, and I'm pretty sure it was once a fortnight, not every week. So I only went to a few classes really, but a lot of it was focused around runway. So it was a lot about practicing your walk, walking in high heels. Because for most people in the development class, they were a lot younger than me. They were, maybe still at school. And it was just a way for them to sort of develop their modeling skills before they potentially wanted to take it full time or, actually start doing it as their job. So for me,
it's so specific that when you do runway, you have to know how to walk.
Yes.
You really it's not good. It really
stands
out if you don't.
Yes, and we did some like nothing like intense, but like a little bit of choreography. So like how to do the turns and how to walk together with other people. And it was actually very helpful because before I did any of those classes, my walk was shocking. I wouldn't say it's amazing now. I'm still definitely not great at walking in high heels, but yeah, it developed during that time. And other stuff was about posing and just like etiquette on shoots as well, like how to prepare, how to behave when you're there, and yeah, just those sort of things that if you're not already working in the industry, you don't really have any idea of it. So it was really helpful.
So what's been your highlight of your modeling career so far?
I think a highlight for me would be a Shiseido campaign I did when I first came to London. That was really cool. It was a fragrance campaign and a sun care campaign. And yeah, I think like a really cool moment that I'll always remember is walking into Harrods and just seeing this big poster of myself like hanging in the beauty department of Harrods. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
That's a dream. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It'd be really surreal.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, you don't get used to that sort of thing.
Oh, well done. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So with tell me about how your nutrition, because I know you from Instagram. So you've got this great Instagram account, which is, now you've got a personal one, but it's model nutrition underscore international. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And it's so helpful. You're giving practical nutritional advice to models. And that's why I was reading it and I was like, God, this is so great. That's why I had to have you on this podcast. But what inspired you to set up that particular account?
A combination of things, really. I suppose like for myself, when I started modeling, I already had a nutrition degree, which came in extremely handy, as you can imagine. But obviously, most people don't have that. Like most models don't come into the industry having a degree or having education in nutrition. And yeah, like through speaking to other models, I realized that that is an area where people often struggle. They don't learn, like how to eat healthy, how to look after your body, and how to do this in like a sustainable way, even though like eating healthy and looking after your body are a very important part of the job that we have as models.
What things were you hearing from other models? What kind of issues were kind of cropping up?
I think like for a lot of the models I know, they've been in the industry for a long time, and now they are in a good place with these things, but it's especially in the early days, like when they're first starting out, they're young, very young for some people, like 15, 16. They're still growing, they're still developing. They probably haven't really ever thought about healthy eating because at that, when you're a teenager, that's just not a priority for most people.
If you're signed to an agency, you're probably naturally quite lean.
Yes, exactly.
So you probably haven't had the massive pressure to have to lose weight or do anything because you're probably the leanest in your class anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for most girls like that, or most models, that is kind of, how it started. But then even if you are naturally lean, you can still be under pressure to lose more weight.
It's only when you get signed to an agency do you start, suddenly it's like, my God, I have to be really conscious about my hip size and my weight, where before you'd never think about that, would you?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think then, like once they sort of start experiencing that pressure, without having any knowledge of how to sort of look after themselves the right way, you quickly can fall down a rabbit hole of, unhealthy ways of trying to lose weight. And I think the internet really doesn't help with that either, because it's just such a minefield in terms of nutrition information. Like when you Google how to lose weight or anything like that, you would just be bombarded with like 100 different approaches, like all sorts of foods you have to cut out, like you can't eat this, you can't eat that,
or supplements you have to buy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the other side of it as well, which is just really overwhelming. So I think it can just be such a difficult thing to navigate when you're a young person, who has the best intentions, but they want to be successful model, they want to like keep their agents and clients happy and everything, and that can lead to like being too restrictive in their diets, and those things over time can erode your body image, your relationship with food, and you can end up in a place where you might really struggle with those things. And um,
True.
that's kind of like, that is a big part of what I want to do with my model nutrition page as well. And you've probably noticed it's a big focus of what I talk about, like, as well as giving practical nutrition tips and recipes, I also really focus on the body image side of things, and like how to improve your relationship with food and things like that, because for models it is so important, and it's a balance that we all need to find for ourselves.
Well, let's explore that a bit more. So have you always, what's your, have you struggled with body image in your career, or what's your journey like in terms of actually liking yourself and your body, or accepting it?
For me, that I did struggle with those things, but it was before I became a model. So when I was about 16, 17, I started, I think, like during puberty and just my teenage years, because I was always very lean as a kid. It was something I never gave any thought to. And it's like my family, everyone is tall and lean. It's in our genetics, I guess. But then when I was a teenager, I started eating less healthy, and doing the typical teenage things of like eating a lot of fast food, and after school going to McDonald's with my friends and all stuff like that. And over time that led to me gaining some weight, and once I noticed that, I was like, okay, like this has happened. And sort of at the same time, I was also getting towards the end of my high school years, and I was very like, I was always a really good student. I got good grades. Like, my academics was incredibly important to me. I always knew I wanted to go to uni and have a career. And education is just something that's really valued in my family. So at that time, I also felt under a lot of pressure to perform at school. And I think those things kind of came together. And then there was another thing, actually. I was planning to, after graduating from high school, I was going to go back to the Netherlands and spend a few months there and see all of my friends, and all the people I hadn't seen in years. I was going to see them again for the first time. And I think that was another thing. Yeah, I was like, oh, I want to look really good, like, when I go back and see all my friends that I haven't seen in years. And all of those things were kind of happening at the same time. And initially I was like, oh, I'm just going to start eating healthier. I'm going to eat less unhealthy foods, eat more healthy food, and start exercising. So I got a gym membership as well. And but over time, it went from something that initially was quite innocent and nothing to worry about, to being quite obsessive, very restrictive, and just completely focused on how I looked and my weight. It had nothing to do with health anymore at that point. I just cared about getting skinnier, and it became quite obsessive.
Well, why do you think this? I mean, I'm sure your story, I'm sure a lot of people totally understand that. It's not uncommon, sadly, where it starts off very innocent and pure, but then for whatever reason, things become more obsessive. Why do you think that is?
That's an interesting question. And I think there's a lot of factors at play there. Personality type actually plays a big role. I think if you...
All or nothing, or quite extreme.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if there's a name for that personality type, but if you're like a very achievement oriented person, I think that means you do take, you expect a lot from yourself, you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and that kind of applies to all areas of life. And it can...
Perfectionism as well. Perfectionists, high achievers,
Yeah.
more likely to suffer from eating disorders.
Yeah.
Like going, yeah, whatever, because you have to be quite full on, you have to be quite regimented.
Yeah, exactly.
To allow things to go that bad in a way.
Yeah. So that's one aspect of it, and then there's other aspects as well. Like, I suppose, well, your upbringing and your home life plays a big role. Which in my case, that didn't contribute. Like, my parents have very healthy relationships with food. Like, my mom never dieted or anything like that. But for other people, if they do grow up in an environment where there's a lot of dieting and a lot of negative talk about food, that can play a role. there's many things that contribute. Like, it's never one thing. There's always a lot of different things at play. Because like some people go on a diet and it never progresses to anything more. They decide to get a bit healthier and they do, and that's where it ends. Whereas for other people like myself, it does spiral. And I think it's also, like the time in your life, like if you're vulnerable to those things at that time,
You're young as
all
well.
of those sort of things.
When you're young, you're still figuring out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of, all of us are more easily led when we're younger, because that's how we learn, by being led by things and realizing, actually, that's not right. And so our kind of brains are designed that way to kind of allow ourselves to be taken in by things. So I think it's kind of amazing that everyone who's 17 hasn't got problems with food, to be honest, because there's so much pressure in society nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. And you also don't really know who you are yet. Like, you haven't fully developed who you are as a person, and what's important to you. And well, you're basically still a child. So
that's what's so hard about modeling, because most models usually start, 14, 15. And like they're put in this industry where there's immediately objectified about how they look, and it's like, still a kid. You shouldn't be sexualizing yourself at 15. You shouldn't be thinking yourself as a clothes hanger at 15. It's hard.
Exactly.
30, thinking yourself that way. But it's I think it's a tremendous amount of pressure. That's why it's so important, like what you're doing, and accounts like yours, kind of shining a light on the industry, but also sharing real practical information. I think it's so important. So with the nutritional side of things for models, what do you think the differences are for a typical model compared to a typical girl who's not a model in terms of nutritional knowledge?
I think, like, as we've already mentioned, for models, it's something you have to start thinking about at a much younger age, because a lot of models start really young. So when most, I suppose, like every teenage girl is under some level of pressure, and it's a time where you're like, it's a crucial time for not only nutrition and development, but also for body image. And it's a time when most of us struggle with body image. But for models, there is a different kind of pressure, and a different, like, it's a whole nother element that's added on top of the experience of every other teenage girl, I suppose. So I think for models, they just need a lot of extra guidance, especially at that really young age, because the things you do when you are 14, 15, 16, they do impact your life beyond those years, both in terms of actual nutrient intakes, as well as, your body image and your relationship with food, because, they are formative years and you are laying the groundwork in a way, for the rest of your life. So I think for models, it's just really, really important that they are given education and guidance, and that they can access that information, like, in an easy way as well. And that's why with my nutrition platform, I started on Instagram, because that's just everyone's on Instagram. And it's just a place that people can come and get some tips, get some advice, simple stuff. Obviously, you can't really give like in-depth information or really one-on-one information, which is also needed, but it's just like a good starting point, I think, to get some information.
A culture of like, knowledge is good.
Mm-hmm.
And also your advice is very practical. It's all evidence-based, evidence-led advice.
It's
not faddy, which I like. So what are the key, in terms of having a healthy diet for a young woman, what do you think the key principles are?
So the three principles that I kind of always come back to are to eat a wide variety of foods, because variety is key in terms of getting all the nutrients you need, to eat mostly whole foods and less processed foods, and to eat mostly plant foods. So they're three really simple sort of guidelines to go by. And obviously you can break each of those down into a lot more detail, but just as like a simple place to start from, I think they're really great. And for instance, like when you're talking about eating mostly plant foods, we like the evidence suggests that a mostly plant-based diet is, where the health benefits are. But that doesn't mean that you need to cut out all animal foods. Like they're not, these are not like restrictive or exclusive principles. They're just really good foundations for a healthy diet.
And that's a really good point, because I think when we start thinking in absolutes, that's when it gets dangerous. Like, I'm never going to touch meat, or I'm never going to have this, I'm never going to touch dairy. As soon as you eliminate things 100% and you're never going to do something, that to me is a kind of obsessive mindset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think like it really all is about your motivations as well, because obviously, like you can be very healthy on a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet, and people have really good reasons for, becoming vegetarian or vegan. So it's not saying that you can't do those things. But in terms of like if you're, you just have to think about your motivations, I think, because if your sole motivation for doing something is to get skinnier or to get as skinny as possible, then you're setting yourself up to be restrictive and to potentially like end up with having fears of certain foods and to be cutting out things that you really don't need to be cutting out.
That's a really good point, because no matter what approach you take, whatever strategy you take, if your motivation is only get skinny, every strategy is going to harm you.
Yeah.
Exercise, exercise strategy or nutrition strategy, that they're always going to end up in a bad place. So I think it's a really good point. You need to think about what your motivations are, and they should be, health should be up there along with, sometimes the thing is, in your industry, sometimes you do need to put on weight or lose weight to get jobs. So how does that work? Because you are employed to showcase clothes for a brand or to showcase a look. So the way your body looks is a large aspect of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is.
Let's give an example, make it easier. Let's say someone's been told they have to put on weight because they're looking a bit too skinny. How would you advise someone to put on weight in a safe way? Or is there a safe way, or is there an unsafe way in your mind?
Yeah, there is. I think there always is. Like there's always a healthy way of doing, like as long as there's not, any really short term sort of time pressure on these things. Like there's definitely a healthy way you can do these things and a not so healthy way. But in terms of your example of weight gain, it really, like there's no one size fits all approach to these things. If I was working with someone who was in that situation, I would need to know a lot about their backstory. I would need to know what their current diet is like, and you would build on that, like you would work from that. General advice for weight gain is to increase the amount of calories you're eating by eating, higher calorie healthy foods, like sources of healthy fats like nuts, seeds, avocado, those kind of things. And to be eating more regularly and things like that. So that's general advice you can give.
Not skipping meals and
but like it really depends on how they, like why they are in that situation. Is it their natural, do they have a really fast metabolism? Are they naturally that lean? Because then you would just give some tips for healthy weight gain. But if they are underweight because they're struggling
the last 6 months, that's a different thing, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, there could be underlying health conditions, there could be an eating disorder or struggles with disordered eating. So I think my approach is really like, we are all unique, we all have different needs, and those things need to be taken into account. Like it's really important when you're giving someone nutrition advice. But in terms of like the more general advice that I give on my Instagram page, I always, like my motto that I always come back to is that your physical and mental well-being should be the priority. And that counts for models as well. It counts for everyone, and it also counts for models, even in a job where your appearance is really important. And it is part of our jobs to look after our appearance and to make sure that you are well presented and that you're looking your best. That still should never come at the expense of your mental or physical well-being.
So true. I also think on top of that, it's not mutually exclusive. If you have a really, really good nutrient-dense diet, your skin will look better, your hair will look, if you've got enough protein in your diet, your hair will look better. If you deprive yourself of calories, you don't just get skinnier, you don't look better. You may get skinnier, but you don't look vibrant. Skin looks dull, hair looks rubbish, nails look rubbish. So actually, if you want to look better, it makes sense to actually eat well as well. So I don't think you have to make a choice.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I always try to remind people of, because when you're working as a model, it can be like hard to not think of food and nutrition as only in relation to your measurements. So when you're thinking of like nutrition for models, your first thought is probably around your measurements. But actually there are other things that good nutrition are really important for as well. Like, as you say, your skin, hair and nails are affected by what you're eating, and just your energy levels. And that's also so important for models. Like, when you're on set, or when you're at a show or doing castings, you're on your feet all day. And yeah, when you're at a shoot, you're expected to bring the energy. Like, you're expected to be able to bring the energy for however long that shoot goes on for. So
that's
like it's
reputation by being friendly, energetic, and a pleasure to work with. That's
exactly
structure. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
I've found when I've worked with models where I've had to help them get slimmer, that sometimes sometimes an agent say we need to get their hips, let's say 35 inches. But when we've got close to that, their face looks worse because they look too drawn out, because their bone structure doesn't suit that. So I think not everyone suits going that slim. And they're better off actually going, no. And I've had this conversation with agents, you know what, it's better if we don't go that low, because they won't look as good, and they'll actually get more bookings by looking a healthy version of themselves rather than like a ridiculously skinny version of their natural self. Let's talk about body image. That's something I know you're very interested in. It's a bit more detail. I imagine, because you're very friendly and open and you have this lovely account, I imagine you get so many private messages of people kind of asking your advice.
Yes.
I don't know how you manage the time dealing with it, but what are the common kind of like body image related issues you hear from the industry or people who follow you?
I think, like, in my DMs, most of the questions I get are from people who want to become models. So it's not. I do also get some from people who are already models, but a lot of it is from young girls who want to become models. And yeah, they generally want to know.
Are they thinking about their body image, or they're just thinking about how to get signed?
I think, yeah, like the measurements is definitely something they're already thinking about. It's not so much like, it's more just about like, I don't know if I'm like, I want to be a model, but I don't know if I'm skinny enough. What should I do? Those sort of questions. Yes. Yeah, it is really hard, because on Instagram, like I don't know anything about these people other than what they are describing to me in the message. I can't give individualized advice to someone who I don't.
On for like 6 hours and really understanding to really offer advice. And it's hard though, because sometimes it's better to give like your best ethical advice, even if you don't know anything or everything about them, rather than them asking someone else who'll give them bad advice.
Yeah, and that's generally what I do as well. Like, if people are asking me about, like, healthy eating tips, well, I've got lots of content about that on my page, so I will send them like specific posts that I've done previously, or things that are relevant to their questions. And yeah, I think like that it's a good place to start, to show people like, these are some healthy eating tips, these are some things you can implement. I am not going to be able to tell someone if they're, like, what they exactly need to do to get signed with an agency, because there isn't really one answer for those kind of questions. But what I can do is to sort of help them prepare their mindset a little bit, because I think, like, obviously as a model, you need to be resilient. You need to come into it with a healthy body image and a good sense of self. Like, those things are what are going to be really, really important throughout your career.
For people listening who aren't in the industry yet, why do you think models, I mean, I agree with you 100%, but why do you think models need to be resilient?
Because rejection is a part of your job. It's as simple as that, really. Rejection is a very regular part of your job as well. In terms of, when you go to castings, you are not going to get booked for every single casting you go to. There'll be a lot of castings you go to where you don't get booked. And that is something you can't take personally, because if you take, like, every time you are an option for something and it doesn't go ahead, or every time you go to a casting and you don't book the job, if you're taking that personally, that's going to have terrible effects on your self-esteem, and also on your body image to some extent, because I think if you are taking these things personally, you can start projecting your own insecurities onto the situation. So you might think, oh, I didn't get chosen for this. It must be because of this, that, or the other insecurity you have about the way you look. When in reality, it could be as simple as, like, in my case, that the client was looking for a brunette, whereas I'm a blonde. It often has nothing to, like, it's not because they don't think you're pretty enough. Like, that's not why.
I think people find it seems so glamorous on the outside, but I think if you kind of put yourself in the shoes of, like, someone who's, let's say, a 17-year-old girl, and she gets signed to an agency, what happens when you get signed is the booker or the agent will say how beautiful you are, how amazing you are, and you feel amazing. And then you go to your first audition and you walk into a room and there's 30 other girls who look exactly like you, and you don't get the job. Of course you're going to feel rubbish. So I think the first kind of, like, few months of being signed to as a model, I just think are so emotional roller coasters. And the models I know, which have kind of lasted a long time in the industry, are ones who can cope with the rejection, who don't take it personally. And it's not because they're prettier or more beautiful or have better bone structure. It's about the mental side.
Yeah, and that's also where my approach to nutrition comes in, because my approach is always very long term. Like, I never recommend doing anything that's not going to benefit you in the long term. And that's also something that I took into my own modeling career. That's because, like, as I told you earlier, I did struggle with body image as a teenager. By the time I started modeling, I was in a really, really good place with those things, because I'd worked through it all. I had healed from those struggles that I had, and I really was better than ever, I suppose. The struggles made me stronger. And when I decided to take on modeling, I went into it thinking, I need to protect myself from these things as much as I can. So I really went in with the promise that I made to myself that I would never do anything that would harm my mental or physical well-being, in terms of like my body and making changes to my body. And that has been so incredibly important in my modeling career. And that's also what I always recommend on my Instagram, and to anyone who asks me, is to just think, like, is this going to benefit me in the long run? Because if it's not going to benefit you in the long run, it's probably going to harm you in the long run. And that means it's a lot harder to have a long career as a model if you're really struggling with your mental health or your physical health. Like,
Well, it's just going to be miserable. Even if your career lasts a long time, you're not going to enjoy it. And what's the point?
Yeah,
Fun,
exactly.
right?
What's the point?
Work as an accountant or something. I mean, it's supposed to be fun.
Yes.
All jobs are supposed to be fun. I think there's joy to be taken out of every job. So how did you work through, if you had bad body image and then you got to a place where you said that very powerful question to yourself, but what did you do personally to actually get to that place? Because it's more, I mean, it takes time, right? Or
yes,
I've never suffered from bad body image. I've been very lucky. Being a guy makes it easier, but I'm always interested in, because I don't fully understand body image. I can get it intellectually, but I can't feel it. I've not experienced it. I'm really interested to hear about how you actually worked through it and how that changed.
Yeah, so I think just like for a bit of context, so what body image is, it's your perception of your body. It actually has very little to do with what your body looks like in reality. So it really is how you view your body, and the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviors that are associated with that. If you have bad body image, that does affect your behavior. Whereas if you have good body image, that also affects your behavior. For me, I think it took getting to a pretty low point with my body image to just realize that like this wasn't benefiting me in any way. I was miserable.
That's what I'm interested in though. From the point where you realized this is bad, it's a problem, I want to change it. Was it how long did it take you to get to a place where you felt like you're stronger?
It took me, I would say, probably at least a year.
Okay.
And to the like between wanting to get better and realizing that I needed to, realizing that I needed to make a change, and actually feeling like I was in a really, really good place, probably a couple of years. Um, but I also kind of just muddled my way through by myself, which I wouldn't recommend to anyone else. Like if this is something you're struggling with, I definitely recommend getting professional help. I at the time decided not to do that.
What did you do? Just like read books or blogs, or did you just think about it a lot?
Yeah, I think I sort of realized that my self-talk wasn't benefiting me, and just yeah, that I needed to make a change. Like to be honest, like thinking back on it now, I can't remember like an exact turning point or like an exact, like light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just something basically. For me, it was about my weight, as it is for a lot of people. I had a goal weight in mind, um, that I really wanted to get to. For some reason, that was just the magic number in my head. But then once I got to that weight,
Did anyone tell you that number, or was that just you just made a number up?
it was just me, I think.
Normal, I think it's quite common.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, when I got to that point, I still wasn't happy. I still I didn't feel any better about myself. I didn't love myself anymore. And I think that's something that a lot of us tell ourselves. Like, you might think, if I get to this, if I lose this much weight, if I achieve this, it doesn't have to do necessarily with body image or with your body. It can be different things in life where you tell yourself, once I achieve this or once I get here, I will be happy,
Yeah.
or
Same
I
with
will love
career.
myself more. I will accept myself. And it wasn't true. Like once I got to that point, I realized actually, no, I'm more miserable now than I was before. This didn't at all achieve what I thought it was going to. And that's when I realized it's not actually about the number. It's not about how I look. It's about learning to accept myself for the way I am and just treating myself with compassion, as well as also realizing that there was so much more to me as a person than the way I looked. And yeah, that took like a little bit more maturity, I think, because as a teenage girl, I did think that even though I was doing very well at school and things were going well, I for some reason I just did put a lot of value on my appearance. And it was kind of unlearning all of those thought processes and replacing those with more positive thought processes. And yeah, like being kinder to myself, working on valuing other things more than my looks, and also seeing food as nourishment and as something that I could do for myself, like as a form of self-care. And at that time, that's also when I started my degree and learning the science of nutrition and of our bodies and how amazing our bodies are. That was actually a big light bulb for me. That's when I was really like, wow, like our bodies are incredible. They can do amazing things. Why am I being so cruel to my own body?
I think
And
it's
it
a
was,
really
yeah.
good point. It's a really, really good point. When we learn about our bodies, or we learn about nutrition, we think you understand the role protein plays, or magnesium plays, or potassium plays, or calcium plays, or fiber plays. You realize, my God, my body needs this stuff. I need to fuel. I need to feed my body. I need to feed it and fuel it with these nutrients.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I think everyone should, I think it's always worth, if we spend, an hour, sometimes 2 hours a day, every day for all our lives eating, for me, it makes sense to spend a little bit of time learning about how food works, how the body works. Don't all have to do degrees like you, but I do think learning a little bit is definitely empowering and definitely helps with having a better relationship. Same with exercise. I think when people understand what the benefits of like getting stronger or more flexible are, you're more likely to see exercise as a way, as a tool to express yourself and to express movement, as opposed to just a way of getting skinny or just a way of getting muscly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it is so important. And that, yeah, like as you say, with food, we will be eating every day for the rest of our lives. So having a good relationship with food and spending the time to sort of evaluate what your relationship with food is, and then to see where it can improve, is such a worthwhile investment of time, because that relationship with food is something that's going to be part of your life forever, because we're going to be eating every day.
What I
Forever.
found helped, I've been very lucky personally. I've not had a negative relationship with food, but I find I start to appreciate food a lot more when I learn how to cook.
Yes.
I made a huge difference actually thinking, okay, I'm going to actually make this, whatever it is, from scratch. And it's like, you get more of an understanding. And you also, when you're making food, you know what you're putting in your body, which I quite like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you cook, or do you have time?
Yeah, I do. I very much enjoy cooking and baking, and yeah, like I've always been a real foodie, and I think it's also kind of like a creative outlet for me as well. I actually used to work as a pastry cook in my uni holidays, yeah, and I really enjoyed that.
It takes time, doesn't it? Like, I mean, I don't know about how you kind of learn. I've kind of self-taught myself how to cook, and I initially started by just copying recipes, and then after I did that, like maybe like 5 or 6 times the same dish, I started getting a little bit creative,
Yeah.
mistakes, and then thinking, oh, maybe I'll try that herb. And I sort of had to start off real basic by copying exactly recipes, and then I started to get kind of like a feel, don't you? You don't have to then measure things; you just get like a sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, I started cooking a lot of Jamie Oliver's recipes, because he had the 15-minute and the 30-minute meals. Yeah, they're so great. And I love his style of cooking as well. He's got a great personality, and I think he really makes cooking fun for people. And that was what inspired me. And I used to cook for my family, and they all loved it when I still lived at home. And then over the years, as you say, you get a bit more daring with your cooking. Like you think, oh, I might throw in a bit of this or a bit of that, and
you realize what doesn't work.
yeah, you just get a feel for those things, like what flavor combinations go well, what doesn't. And cooking your own food is really, really good as like a nutrition tip as well, because you know what's going in it. You have a lot more. Yeah, exactly. And I think it is a form of self-care, like when you are putting in that time and energy to make beautiful, nourishing meals for yourself, like that's the really great thing.
And I also think one of the things my industry, the fitness industry, does badly, they usually reduce food down to purely its calories, how nutritious is it, and not the calories in, calories out thing. But food should also taste nice. It should be enjoyable. And
Yeah.
when you start cooking, you start realizing like it's quite easy. You can play around with ingredients and with herbs and stuff to make it better. And food should be enjoyable. It shouldn't just be a functional thing just to make you slimmer or make you bigger or help your heart. It should be something to enjoy. And that's
Yeah.
a good relationship, I think, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. No, I couldn't agree more. And it actually it makes it a lot more doable to stick to healthy eating as well, if you're enjoying what you're eating. Because if you're eating foods that are considered to be healthy, but you really don't like the taste of them, like you're gonna get really bored, and you're probably gonna throw in the towel pretty quickly, because like who wants to eat things that they don't like the taste of? Whereas if you are, yeah, enjoying what you're eating and it's satisfying to you, then it's going to just be so much easier to keep doing that for the long term. And that's what we want. We want to be able to make changes and to create habits that we can stick to, not just for a couple of weeks, but for the rest of our lives.
Really good point. I mean, when I'm helping my clients, when we're looking at diet, we tend to make little tweaks rather than sudden changes, because then I know they're more likely to change them. Maybe the first week might be a little bit more water, then they get used to that for a week, then we'll work on maybe whatever it may be, more calories, more protein, less this, less that, but always small little changes, so it doesn't feel like a shock. And then when you fast forward 2 months and they look back and like, my God, I'm eating so much better. But because it was little incremental changes, it felt kind of natural and organic in a way.
Yeah, there's definitely a psychology behind like behavior change. And if you try to completely overhaul your diet or your exercise regime all at once, it's just not sustainable, and it's overwhelming, and it's way too difficult. And it's definitely all about, making those one or two small changes, sticking to them for a few weeks. And then when that has become a habit, you can add in something else, or you can change something else. And over time, that's going to have a much bigger impact on your health than, doing everything at once, but then that only lasting a couple of weeks or a month.
Yeah. Something I picked up when you mentioned, when you said you liked cooking like snacks, healthy snacks for your Instagram. What are good healthy snacks, do you think, for models who, need to be, you can't be completely unconscious about the amount of calories you have.
Mm-hmm.
But well, you tell me, actually, that's me kind of leap projecting. When you're making a snack, what kind of things should you think of in terms of health?
I think a good sort of rule of thumb is you want it to be filling, and energizing. Like, that's the whole point of eating the snack. And whether it's going to be filling or not kind of depends on what nutrients are in it. So, for instance, if you're having a snack that's mostly just carbohydrates, it will give you some energy, but it's not going to keep you full for long. Whereas if you have a snack that also has protein, or that also has fiber, or that also has healthy fat, that's going to keep you full for a lot longer. So when I'm making snacks, I try to include most, if not all, of those nutrients in them. So for instance, like, I quite like making bliss balls or protein balls. They tend to have nuts, so that's like a source of healthy fat as well as protein. And if you add protein, then that's extra protein, obviously. They'll have carbohydrates as well if you're using like dried fruit or something like that. And then those same ingredients also contain fiber. So those are a good snack. Like, they're really filling, they're energizing, and I think they taste great. Other good snack options, like if you're more of a savory snacker, then something like veggie sticks and crackers with hummus is really good. Again, you're getting fiber and some protein and carbohydrates. Like, it's a good mix of nutrients that's going to satisfy you for longer. And I'm trying to think what else. I like to, like, as I said, I like baking, so I'll make like a healthy banana bread, or some healthy muffins, and I often like to use oats in them, and some fruit, like whether it's banana or blueberries or things like that. And just things like that. Or, a smoothie is great. Like, there's lots of different options. I think for models, it's really helpful to have things that you can make on the weekend, and then you pop it in the fridge or the freezer and you just grab it out. And if you're really, really short on time, then just a handful of nuts is a really good snack. If you just have like a bag of nuts in your handbag, that's something you can always go to if you need a bit of energy, or if you're, having to wait a long time for lunch or whatever it might be. It's about having those things easily available to you. I think that's a big thing as a model.
You're more likely to grab a crunchy or something if you're starving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, something that I always recommend not doing is leaving too much time in between eating, because if you skip a meal, or you're just leaving a really, really long time in between your meals, you're going to be really hungry by the time you get to the next meal. And that when you are that hungry, you often can feel quite out of control around food. Like, you might eat a lot of food really quickly, or you might make less healthy choices. Whereas if you're just feeding your body regularly, and when you start to feel a little bit hungry, you have a snack or whatever, that makes it a lot easier to stick to your healthy eating and to make healthier choices.
Yeah, really good point. Another thing which I think is worth mentioning, which I do like, I don't just buy food every day. I do like a weekly shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I do the weekly shop not when I'm feeling starving.
Yeah.
When I'm feeling good, otherwise I'll just end up getting a load of rubbish. So the shop means in the house I have good food. So I've got a sweet tooth. My favorite kind of sweets are like kids sweets, like fizzy cola bottles, like crap stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Chocolate. So I don't have any in the house. So if I'm desperate to get like a fizzy cola bottle, I've got to walk 15 minutes to get one, which I won't do because I can't be. But if you know, if next to me on my desk here, I had 50 fizzy cola bottles, there's no way I would have them by the time this conversation ended. You know, because they're there. So I know that I don't have huge amounts of self-discipline. So I make it easy for myself by not having rubbish in the house. And I think that can help as well.
Yeah, and it's all about that balance too. Like you can,
Yourself, you know?
yeah, very true. Yeah. And I think like obviously, you know, you can enjoy your fizzy cola bottles from time to time. There's a place for everything in a healthy diet. Like you don't need to cut anything out completely. That doesn't mean that you have to have everything in your diet. Like if there's things that aren't very nutritious that you don't particularly care for, then it's obviously fine to not have them. But if there are things that you do really enjoy and they're not as nutritious, you can enjoy them. And it actually, again, allowing yourself to enjoy those foods from time to time makes it easier to eat healthy overall. Because anytime that you're really restrictive or that you're cutting something out completely, our human psychology makes us want it more, basically.
Weird, isn't it? Like if I said, you know, you might not like chocolate ice cream, but if I said you are not allowed chocolate ice cream in any circumstances the next 6 months, all you do is think about, I want chocolate ice cream, even if you didn't want it. It is funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just on a personal level, like, are there some supplements you take on a regular basis yourself, which you think are good?
I take vitamin D in the winter months. That's very important.
Me too.
Yeah, basically everyone should be taking vitamin D in the winter months because at that time we can't get enough of it from the sunshine. And people with darker skin tones potentially also should take vitamin D in the summer months as well. But again, like it's individualized, so it's worth talking to your doctor or healthcare provider about that.
Sometimes all year round, actually, for darker skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anything
and
else you take?
personally, no, I am very much like a food first believer. So, and because I eat healthy, I eat wide variety, I can get all the nutrients I need from food. But I think like under certain circumstances, there are other supplements that you should take. For instance, if you're vegan, then a B12 supplement is important, potentially an omega-3 supplement as well. But yeah, for me,
Protein as well. Some vegans I work with sometimes when they're training, because obviously I'm exposed to
yeah,
people who train hard as well as looking after their diet. Sometimes I find sometimes supplementing a little bit of pea protein or hemp protein
mm-hmm.
if you're training, like doing weightlifting regularly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's very true. If you're training, that definitely changes your nutritional needs as well.
Yeah, you need more calories and
Yes.
protein. Yeah, not just more protein, but more calories
Mm-hmm.
when you're training.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, for me, I don't take any other supplements other than that. No, you can get all the nutrients. Like if you're a healthy person with access to a wide variety of foods, you don't have, underlying health conditions or other reasons like that. You can get the nutrients you need from your diet.
I take a vitamin pill every day,
Mm-hmm.
just in case I don't manage to hit all my nutrients in my diet. I think that's pretty a safe bet. I take vitamin D, and also at night I also take magnesium. But because I train a lot and I don't sleep that much, and magnesium helps with recovery and with sleep.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're controversial, are they?
No, and I think it's just an individualized thing again, isn't it? Like we all have different lifestyles, we have different needs, and that affects what our diet's like, and yeah, just what our nutrient needs are like.
But I like what you said. I think the word supplement, it means it's additional. You should really be able to get most everything you need from your diet, as much as you can. That's always then if you feel like there's something missing, like if you're anemic, maybe taking iron, and but then a dietitian will help you with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And also with people listening who are training hard, like athletes, there are certain supplements which help with performance. But again, you ideally a performance nutritionist will help you in terms of things like creatine or protein, because it's depending on how hard you train and what you need, you may need to supplement to get extra performance. But that's only for the elite. Most people who go to the gym 3 times a week don't need to be taking protein shakes and creatine, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it is really important to get a professional opinion about these topics because the internet is, a minefield, and there's so much conflicting information about things that you have to take, or things that are said to make huge improvements on your health. And I think it's important to remember that usually when it comes to these sort of miracle cures and things like that, like if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. And from a nutrition perspective, like the best thing that you can do for your health is to eat a wide variety of healthy foods over a long, consistent period of time. Like there's not really one thing that's going to drastically improve your health. Like there's not one miracle thing. There's not one miracle thing that's going to drastically help you to lose weight. I think sometimes we want to believe those things are true because it would make it a lot easier, but
the marketing of these things are, a lot of like sports supplements are marketed with before and after photos. It's like there's no way someone got like a six-pack from taking a pill.
No.
No, it doesn't work like that.
If it was that easy, we'd all have a six-pack.
If there was a wonderful pill which made me stronger or this or that, I would take it. But the point is, there isn't. Only, like I said, with elite athletes, some certain performance supplements can give you an extra 1% if you're already training hard. But I personally, I think Lillian agrees with me, you shouldn't really worry about supplements first. You should worry about or focus on having a healthy, balanced, nutrient-dense diet, moving regularly, having a good relationship with food. Those things will make a considerable, measurable difference to your happiness and to your body, more than any kind of pill will.
Yeah.
So let's finish this off by getting to know you a little bit, because I've only met you on Zoom. So I've got some quick fire questions, which you have no idea what I'm going to ask you, but you've got to answer.
Oh.
They're not about nutrition, they're about you, so don't worry.
Okay.
All right. Favorite TV show?
At the moment, This Is Us.
What, sorry?
This Is Us. It's on Prime. It's not on Netflix, but it's a great show. Highly recommend.
All right, check that out. Favorite restaurant?
Ooh, I love Ottolenghi restaurants. There's a couple of them around London. They're definitely, really great.
Favorite type of exercise?
Yoga?
Yeah. Bit cliched, model doing yoga, but
It's the truth. I can only tell you the truth.
What kind of yoga do you do?
At the moment, it's all on YouTube.
What is it, like hatha or restorative or ashtanga?
A real mix, Ashtanga, hatha, some yin. It depends on how I'm feeling on the day. And I also do other exercise, but yoga is kind of like what I enjoy the most.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's so important to find exercise we love and works for us, and then just be consistent with it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Favorite film?
I don't actually really have a favorite film.
Last
I feel like it's
film you watched then?
Oh, I think I've got a favorite chick flick.
That'll work. There's only girls listening to this podcast, so that'll work.
Okay, it's Notting Hill.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
That's a classic. Everyone loves that.
It never gets old, that film.
Perfect film. All right. Next place you want to go on holiday?
I'm going to Mallorca, fingers crossed, in September.
Cool. I think half of the country is going to Mallorca.
Yep. Probably.
But no, I think we all need it.
You've got to take what you can get at the moment, isn't it?
That's true. Favorite book?
My favorite novel is All the Light We Cannot See. It's a beautifully written novel about World War II.
A few more questions. First gig you ever went to?
It was quite a small gig, a band from New Zealand called Broods. This is when I was still living in Western Australia. So
Never heard of them.
No, I'm not surprised.
They didn't really get across the did they?
Potentially not, no.
First album you bought or downloaded, I guess. You're quite young, aren't you, still? So you may have downloaded.
It would have to have been a Dutch children's album, probably. So not something you'd be familiar with.
Whereabouts in Holland are you from, anyway?
I'm from Zeeland, which is right near the Belgian border, so like southwest. Yeah.
Yeah, never heard of that either.
It's about 3 hours south of Amsterdam, so not
I've heard
many
of
people are
Amsterdam.
familiar with it.
I've heard of Amsterdam. I used to go to Holland quite a bit. I used to go out with a girl from Utrecht, so I used to
Oh,
go
yeah.
over there quite regularly. And I actually spent millennium in Amsterdam.
Oh, cool.
And how old was I? I was in mid-20s. That was fun. It was a fun place to spend millennium because it was a big deal back then.
Yeah, I think I was 6 at the time, so I don't remember it quite as well, but
there was a big party.
Yeah, I bet.
The Dutch know how to party. Look, thank you so much. Thank you so much. How can people follow you? I think Instagram is the best way, right? But
yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok.
TikTok, yeah, I'm not on that. You're pretty big on that, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got like 11,000 followers, so it's growing, which is good. But yeah, so my handle is the same on both platforms. It's model nutrition _INTL. I'm currently also working on a website, so soon I will be able to send you to a web address as well, which is exciting. But for now, Instagram is probably the best place, yeah.
We'll add that into the show notes so people can see when they're listening on iTunes and stuff. So once it's done, we'll add that in.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, on this Friday afternoon. I really appreciate it. Really fascinating. I love what you're doing. It's really sort of good, sensible advice to help girls get a good mindset and have a good relationship with food and their body, which is it's what I'm all about. So thank you so much for doing what you do. I think it's wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was.
Hey, so I had a big old technical issue with that episode, and to fix it I had to mess around with the audio, and I don't know, hopefully it was, well, if you're listening to this now, I guess it was passable, but I do apologise to my guest Lillian and to you listening in that I had to, that the audio wasn't as good as it should be, but yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, great advice, Lillian. Great practical advice, right? You can't knock that. What you'll find is, I mean, I know lots of different dietitians, nutritionists, performance nutritionists, health coaches, people who've done degrees in nutrition, master's degrees in nutrition, people who are interested in it, trainers who've got views in it. I know a lot of people who have opinions about nutrition. And what you find is, even though sometimes they feel like everyone's saying different things, when you actually go a bit deeper and you actually look about what people argue about and what people agree about, people tend to agree on about 95% of nutrition. Eat healthy, nutrient-dense diets, have a balance between the macronutrients and micronutrients, don't rely on supplements, have lots of water, don't overeat, don't undereat. Everyone agrees with that. It's only in the periphery, the little details, are there arguments amongst nutritionists, and where sometimes on Instagram or on podcasts it can feel so overwhelming because it's like, oh my god, do I listen to this person or this person? Should I take high dose vitamin C like Patrick Holford, or should I do this like Ian Marber, or this? Like I said, don't stress about that. Sometimes for books to be written, for magazine articles to come out, for articles to be exciting enough with a clickbaity title for you to click, there has to be an outlandish claim. Not many books come out which say, hey, eat healthy and, eat a balanced meal most of the time and you'll be fine. That wouldn't sell anything. We have to think about these miracle cures or this perfect supplement. No such thing. Have a balanced diet. Listen to people like Lillian. She's got her head screwed on. Very sensible advice. Very practical advice. And if you are struggling in nutrition, always, I'm a big believer in coaching. As a coach myself, go and see an expert. And keep on tuning in, because I've got all kinds of different nutritional experts coming in with different perspectives. Like I said, you'll see a common theme, which is kind of my point, that, in terms of eating healthy and what that means and certain principles I think we should stick to. And then we'll, with some of the performance nutritionists and dietitians I've got coming on, we'll talk a bit more detail about certain aspects. All right, so yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again for Lillian. And also, I've had so many comments regarding it was 2 weeks ago, the episode I had with Rhea Ingleby, where she talked very candidly about her recovery from cancer, second bout of cancer, and her rituals and basically her wellbeing strategy going through it. And so many comments regarding that. So thank you. I'm pleased that resonated or kind of hit a nerve or did something to you up here. I appreciate it. I mean, I'm trying to keep these podcasts varied. So yeah, any feedback is welcome. I mean, I'm still going to do them regardless. Even if you don't give me any feedback, I'm still going to do them. I'm really enjoying doing them. Our numbers are going up. We have thousands of people listening, which is pretty cool. And thanks for being a fan of the show. I really appreciate it. All right, take care, stay safe, and talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the MX podcast. All feedback, reviews, and social shares are very much appreciated. To find out more about the Methodology X online members club, our award-winning MX group fitness classes, or to join our global family of MX instructors, please visit danrobertsgroup.com.